Alrighty, I'm just gonna go put us through. So there we go. We are live. So hi everybody. Welcome to the second session of the Open Day. A much more sort of informal open session. I have posted the link to this session in the live chat, so please feel free to jump into the Jitsi room with us. We'd love to have you. If not, please, if you have any questions, write them in the live chat and I will read them out as best I can. And in the room with us, we have a whole bunch of people. And Tim is now just showing his screen, getting ready, and we will then hop on into traveling through time. And happy 20th birthday to QGIS.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, we're hoping Gary's going to join us. It's, I don't know, like 3:30 in the morning in Alaska or something. Maybe not quite so early. It's early there. So no worries if he comes a bit later. So I've assembled or tried to assemble a bit of a timeline. I've got definitely some gaps, which I hope the others in the room will help me fill in, of just things that happened over the last 20 years in the QGIS project. So between 2002 to 2022, and I can share the link to the document. Amy, you've got it in the other channel. We can put it in the YouTube channel if somebody wants to come and scroll and browse around. Sure. There is a bunch of sort of scrap stuff at the end as well, but anyway, that doesn't matter. So I thought we could just travel through time and talk about what happened over the project, over the life of the project, and like point out some fun things. Starting back in 2002, I think our unofficial, there's some contention about when QGIS started, because I think Gary told me he actually started in 2001 writing the code, but I think the first release he made was in 2002. So, or it might have been that the earlier in 2002 he actually started writing it. He can clarify for us when he joins us. So what happened first? There's did anybody try the first 0.0.1 version of QGIS in the room? Jürgen? Richard?
I came to it a bit later than that. I think it was in the twos.
So the first release was announced. Somebody's got some feedback. Maybe it's you, Christine. I'm not sure. If you could just mute when you're not talking, if you don't mind. Thanks. The first release was announced on this website called Freshmeat, which really, it's actually still online, but it's like nobody's bothered to buy a new SSL certificate for it for a while. So it's like really defunct now. But it used to be the way that people would announce all the open source software projects and all the versions of it. And I don't really know if there's anything equivalent to it anymore. I guess everyone has their own publicity campaigns independently of that. But that's how I found out about QGIS, and I went and downloaded it and built it. And that release was really kind of basic. It was, what could you do? You could look at your data in Postgres. There were no tools for panning or zooming, or you couldn't change the layer order, or even change where the layers were visible or not. It was pretty basic, but it was the seed. And then in 2003, I think a bunch of us started arriving in the project and started adding features. If you go in QGIS, you can find, I don't know if all of the developers are in there, but developers who've been contributing, you can find, there's a secret Easter egg. You can go in the bottom on the coordinate bar here and type contributors, like that, and it will add a new layer, which is needs some styling updates, but it's the same as this blue one that I've got here. And that layer is a list of everybody who's so far put their name into the contributors file. Actually more people than that. And it's got some fun facts about each person. Well, fun is a relative term, but it's got some facts about what kind of involvement they have, whether they're committer or doing other things, and what their first change was. You can see mine was like in December 2003. Marco joined. Where's the other Marco? Marco Hugentobler was also in 2003. So you can find some fun timeline of when people arrived in the project and what kind of things they first worked on. That's baked into QGIS. And one of the funny things that happened in the early version early versions was that we didn't have a QGIS server and we didn't have other ways to publish your project online. So somebody, I forget who it was, wrote a kind of an exporter that would generate a map server map file based on your QGIS project. And then you could kind of like prepare your map file in QGIS by just adding layers and things, and then export the map file and put it on your server and kind of publish your project like that. So things were pretty low tech, but some interesting ideas happening already then. With 2004, things started to move a lot. You could see we had like 5-6 releases in that year, and up until then we didn't have, I think, shapefile support. Most raster formats were not supported. I think it was really only GeoTIFF that was supported, and so we started adding in new features. I don't even recall if we had the GDAL provider yet. So maybe that was the first scratchings of the GDAL provider. And for rasters, we started to have things like being able to build pyramids and other kind of sort of raster-based improvements. This was also the first time we had plugins in QGIS, but they were C++ plugins only. And some of those plugins still remain today. So if you go to these decorations here in QGIS, some of these are still, I think they've all been somewhat tweaked and improved a lot since the first version, but these are all the vestiges of those early days of the initial plugin support for QGIS. In fact, I think we've stripped out most of the C++ plugins except for these, and these really don't need to be, I don't even know if they're plugins anymore. I think they might just be core functions now. Jürgen, can you remember, did we change them into core code or are they still plugins?
I think they are core now.
Yeah. And then, let's see. So it was the first plugins, and then also Marco Hugentobler wrote the first map server. I think it was already, he says it's a plugin. I think it used to have a QGIS desktop running, and then you could connect to it over your web browser. And also we got the first GRASS support back in 2004. So that's going back a long time. First digitizing support back in 2004. And we only got a Windows version in 2004. After then, we'd all been working on Linux only. And also attribute actions was added. Those are these little actions that you can fire off over here. I don't have any setup here, but this little icon that you see here, which you can go and if you go into the layer properties, you can set up the actions for a layer, and those let you do things like when you click on a point, show a web page or run some process on your computer or something like that. That's also very early functionality.
Tim, what was kind of the ignition point for the beginning of QGIS? I don't really know what was going on in the world at the time. I think I was 10. But so what was kind of the idea for bringing in QGIS? Was something else being done, or did someone just want to pull together all these different tools into something that was more usable?
So Christine probably can join the conversation there, because it sounds like she's got a similar history on using desktop GIS. So what was the prevalent software de rigueur back in 2000?
Well, I was trying all sorts of the free software. Like I tried Grass. I've never been able to get a handle on Grass, and a few others. Saga, I think, is another one I've tried, and I keep trying. And QGIS was the first one that's like, hey, look, this does similar things to ArcGIS because, I can't afford ArcGIS, and I can use shape files. I can use it on all sorts of things. So to me, I'm really glad it came along. And was there just demand from people to have something that was simpler, that could do similar things to the I was just relieved to find it that I didn't have to get a proprietary software.
Yeah, so I think there were a couple of things going on. One was that Esri, up until version 3.x of their ArcView at the time and ArcInfo products, they supported Unix and Windows, and I don't think Mac OS was really in the picture then. But when they changed their architecture to use Microsoft .NET, whatever it is, frameworks, it basically made it Windows only. So all of us who are running Linux have a GIS we could use. And for people that were interested in open source, having like open source software, there was like Christine said, there was Grass, but it wasn't very user friendly, and
Still
so so we drag and drop a layer and like click on buttons to change the colors, and similar experience to what you got in ArcView. Not ArcInfo. ArcInfo was, I guess, the analogy to Grass, because it was like you had to type commands, and like it was kind of a bit more arcane to use. But ArcView was like the first, like really, point and click GIS with a proper GUI interface and so on. And I think Gary, it's a pity he's not here, but maybe when he joins, he can tell us again. But I think he had some particular things he was trying to connect to his PostGIS Postgres database, because PostGIS, I think, if you go and Google when PostGIS came out, I think it was around about the same time. PostGIS history. I think it came out. Let's see if we get some good results here. 2005. That's kind of weird because he was already supporting it. So maybe it was unofficially released, or maybe there was some things going on before that. But he wanted to be able to connect to Postgres from his GIS and look at the data in it. And there wasn't really any tool for doing that. And that's why QGIS was built from the ground up to be like a Postgres client. And I think it's still like a really first class, thanks to Jürgen. I think he's the main maintainer of the Postgres layer of support in there now. It's really like a top-notch client for having your data in a database, your spatial data database, and working with it in the database. And the people that joined in those early days, because it was very like open, nascent project, most of us were just coming to like try it out, and then seeing there was something missing, and then just wanting to add the piece that scratched our own itch to it. So it was a bit more like, I can say, Wild West of what features were in, and it was kind of random, where now I think there's a lot more. It's still pretty wide range of things that come into the project, but it's the whole project management is very much more rigorous than it was back in those days. So moving on the timeline, we went to QGIS 0.73 in 2005. And that was the first time we had on-the-fly projection. So that meant before, if you had a layer in one coordinate reference system and another one in another coordinate reference system, you couldn't see them on top of each other. And so we added that, and we also, it's the first time we had the ability to make a print map, which is also kind of funny. I think you could before just print what was on the screen pretty much. You could like export the screen, like the view on your desktop application. You couldn't make a proper map layout. And the grass tools also started getting like expanded. And Radim Blazek, who's not very present in the project anymore, but he wrote a lot of cool stuff for doing grass support, and basically to take care of people like Christine who didn't want to learn grass, but who maybe wanted to use all the power of what grass had to offer. We started to like wire in all these capabilities of grass into QGIS. We also got spatial bookmarks, so that allows you to like bookmark a place rather than just like a file in your browser, in your web browser. You could bookmark an area. And that was all, basically all of that work was in collaboration, was happening on an IRC channel. IRC was, I know Jürgen still misses IRC, or still uses IRC, but IRC was like the way that most people text chatted in those days, right? You didn't have any kind of instant messaging clients really. And maybe, what is that thing called, Jürgen, ICU, what is it called? And AIM Messenger, and there was a few basic ones, but they were pretty non-standard.
ICQ, maybe.
ICQ, yeah, not IC. Thank you. Yeah, ICQ, and so those were all sort of like not really designed for group chats and so on. And IRC was a really nice place for group chat, but it was text-only in the place. So we had a very nice, friendly room where we all hung out and chatted while we were coding, and then in 2006 we started the mailing lists. So that was the first time we actually had like a more organized way of working by like telling each other what we were doing on email and so on. And then in 2007 was probably one of the biggest sea changes in QGIS, because that was the year that Martin Dobiash, I think, added the first Python bindings to QGIS. So that meant there wasn't Python plugins yet. There was just a way of being able to program like within QGIS using the QGIS API, but using Python, which became the basis of what the plugin system would allow you to do. But at that time, I think you could just make like standalone scripts. There weren't plugins. And that was really exciting because Python, like, still nerdy, but it was a lot more accessible to people to code in than C++. You didn't have to compile things and wait for them to compile, and there was a fast computer to do all that compiling. You could just try things and run them straight off. We also got the user. So before we had the developer mailing list, I think the user mailing list started in 2008. There's a little link here with the first message saying, "Hello, is this thing on?" from Gary. Let's open it. Did I get it right? I can't find it now, but it was, basically just, "Hello, we're here." And I might have put the wrong link in there now, but and then in 2008 we also got the first ability to make plugins with QGIS, and there was a really even a bigger game changer than the original Python bindings, because now people could like add on to QGIS without having to submit something to the core of QGIS. And I think I've got some stats earlier, but in those early days there were only a few plugins available, and but it was really exciting to be able to go and create new functions in QGIS without having to write any C++, and to be able to share it with your friends and colleagues and what have you. And then in 2009, I guess that's when we met Jürgen and Richard. Were you at the first Hackfest, Richard? It was the first time that we had a Hackfest. We tried multiple times changing the name to something more socially acceptable, like developer meetings, but it sounded so corporate, and we always like to just refer to them as Hackfest. And I think there were maybe 15 of us, something like that, 15 or 20 of us there. And it was quite exciting because most of us had never met each other face to face. It was sort of 7 years into the project. There had been a small meeting before that in Karlsruhe where 3 of us met, but for the most part, none of us had actually ever seen each other. I think Jürgen's probably still shell-shocked at having to meet me in person.
Richard just sent a link in the chat of what you all looked like in 2009.
In the chat of here.
Hmm.
Let me have a look. I had a lot more hair, I remember that. Ooh, oh, that's great.
So are these all the people that were contributing to QGIS at the time?
Not all of them, but a lot of them. I'll see how many I can name. That's Andreas Neumann. He's now on Project PSC. Marco Hugentobler, he was one of the very earliest developers. He was on a PSC. This guy I don't remember. This is yours truly. I think that's Milena from Poland. And that's Alex Brewy. Greetings to you, Alex. And Boris Jurgil. I don't remember him. Maybe can somebody help me? And I think this is Carsten Farmer who wrote the Manage R plugin, which was actually a very cool thing. It was like a whole R studio kind of environment in QGIS, but it got discontinued and unfortunately, just never saw the light of day again. That's there's Anita Graza. She's on the PSC. I'm sorry, your name is slipping me now.
2009 is a long time ago.
No, well, I'm drawing a blank. That's Martin Dobiash, who wrote the Python support and a lot of other cool stuff, 3D and a lot of the symbology system as we know it now with the symbol layers. It's all in there. Is that Paolo?
Serving says Anne.
Anne Gisler. Sorry, Anne. I'm so sorry. Just drew a blank on your name.
Thanks, Map Serving.
And Gisler came and spent like 6 months in South Africa working in my office with me, so I have no excuse for forgetting your name. But and this is Werner Machu, who spearheaded all the translation system. Like a lot of, he still manages like all the translation coordination. This guy I don't remember, and this guy I don't remember. You guys have to help me out.
Cedric.
Cedric, yes, Cedric. He was from Canton Solothurn, right? And they were one of the first production level users of QGIS. They funded a lot of the early work in QGIS as well, along with Horst Duster, who's now from Sourcepol, but he was in the department in Solothurn at the time, and Richard Davenfurter, who's kindly shared the picture, and Jürgen Fischer, who's Richard has been just to like Richard likes to hide in the background, but he's been like absolutely one of the rocks of QGIS in terms of keeping all the infrastructure running, all the stuff that's kind of invisible and nobody ever thanks him for. And Jürgen's pretty much in the same boat. He's keeping all the servers running, the website, building all the documentation, introducing the change logs, finding difficult, to diagnose bugs, and just really just being like a bedrock of the project. And Jürgen as well. It's just been so great working with Jürgen. He's does the release management. It's thanks to him that we have such a fantastic, reliable release cadence. Every 4 months, a release comes out like clockwork. And as I mentioned before, you're the Postgres guru, and I guess Markathian, you're probably trying to sit next to Jürgen in the room now because Jürgen also did all the the DWG, DXF magic in QGIS to bring in CAD data into QGIS. What have I left out from you? Jürgen also helps with a lot of the infrastructure management and like keeping the servers running. He does all the Debian package builds, the Windows builds. God, I don't know how you kept saying through all these years doing all that stuff, Jürgen. And Horst Duster, he did a lot of things playing with PG versioning and so on. He didn't really put things in core, but his work in Solartherm helped to support the project by like paying for core developers and pioneering that. This guy, Jürgen, remind me, who's this again? Can you remember? I feel like I know his name, but I can't remember it right now. So yeah, there's a blast from the past. I'm going to steal your picture. Open source and all that, Richard, and put it in here. Oh dear, that's very sad. I'm in the wrong browser to do it and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I have to steal it later. I have a bit of a hold in my timeline for these 3 years. Maybe I blanked it out in my head. Can anybody remember any significant things that happened in 2010, 11, and 12?
The Soccer World Cup.
Yeah.
I think the Biden not there, isn't it?
Your audio is cutting. You think that what?
The Biden plugins?
The website or the type in the chat. I think they were already available in 2008, from what I can see from the release announcement here. And I should say, yeah.
Map Serving says that the last gentleman in the photo was Stefan Menzel. And then Hans van der Kost asks, when was the Osteo 4W installer introduced?
That's one for Jürgen.
Remember to unmute yourself if you're talking.
I'm looking it up. I don't know. Initially, Frank Warmodam's work. And I think Jeff McKenna also did initial work on Osteo 4W. I'm not exactly sure when that was, but it has been 2009 also, maybe? I don't know.
Before that, Jürgen, we had the Ming W build, or what did we have before? I think it was cross-compiled, eh?
No. There was also a standalone installer for QGIS back then, but it was based on separate or self-built dependencies.
I'm going to put some question marks here because we're not sure of the year. It would be really cool to make one of those nice timeline graphics, Amy, once we get all our blanks filled in, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take a whack at that.
Yeah, so we've got a bit of a hole here. I can't remember. It's like a blur for me what happened in those years. And I tried Googling around, but when you search for QGIS 2010 on Google, then it comes up with QGIS 2.10, the release. So concrete information there. Anyway, moving 3 years of amazing activity, I'm sure, happened in that time, which I can't remember much of. And then we had QGIS 2 was released. And that was a big change. I think, Jürgen, we switched to Q4 that time as well. Do you remember?
Not really. We did switch at some point, but I don't know when that was.
I think it was for QGIS 2, because I think it was the reason we actually bumped up the version number to 2 instead of 1 point something. And then we also changed the name from Quantum GIS to QGIS. And it's quite funny, if you go back and look at that first release announcement, you can see Gary already called it QGIS with the small I and S. And I've been like trying single-handedly to get the world to write it all in capital letters, but I'm failing miserably. But it's funny because people spell it QG small I-S, QG small I and small S. And some people still call it quantum, but that was when we officially ditched the quantum in front. The quantum never actually meant anything. It was just Gary put the Q in front because it kind of also was built on the Qt framework, which also used Q as a prefix for things. And in those early days, I don't know if we still have it, but we had like a namespace booked in, like reserved in the Qt project to say that starting with QGIS was like a QGIS library. I think we did also maybe do a logo change then from to the most recent library, but icon, but to a more modern version of the old Q icon. That was when we added plugin manager as well, so that before the plugins, I don't remember how we even installed them, but from what I could read in the logs, we added the plugin manager, which is this thing you find if you go plugins here. And there was Boris Jürgil that worked on this. It was a really nice feature to have that you could just right from in QGIS add all these cool new functions. I did a count quickly for yesterday to see how many plugins we've got in the repo, and we've got over 1,600 plugins now in that repo. And they cover every kind of functionality you can imagine. Like, I guess there's even some kind of wacky ones, but really just all kinds of industries and use cases are covered with those plugins. It's been really nice that we didn't have to maintain all of those esoteric features inside of the main part of QGIS. There was also the
Jeff
year.
and Raymond are having a couple of comments in the live chat. I think they should both join this open group here. The link is there. So MS4W Jeff created in 2003.
Oh, and wait. 2003 or 13?
No, it's definitely 2003. And then OSGeo 4W 2007, tentatively.
Okay, so I must move my... It seems a bit earlier than what I remember, but what I remember isn't a good, I'm going to say, well-calibrated thing to use. Oh.
Apparently 2007 is firm, not tentative.
Okay.
Why'd you put a question mark?
Okay, 2007, but was Jürgen already using it in 2007? Because I think he basically was from the beginning, hey, Jürgen? Like,
No, we initially made ANSYS installers without OSGeo4W. It was some time on IRC where Frank Warmerdam said that there was OSGeo4W. Earlier on, we didn't know.
Okay, so that's not necessarily when it replaced that in 2007. It was just when the OSGeo4W project started.
Tim, do you mind just popping me the link to this document in this actual chat?
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second. I'll just put that. where it was there. And maybe we can just explain a little bit, Jürgen, what the OSGeo4W installer is, because I guess we skipped that little nuance in the conversation.
I was about to ask that. Why are there two? Why is there standalone and why is there an OSGeo4W?
Well, the OSGeo4W installer has separate packages, so you can upgrade stuff partly, and you don't have to have a big blob that you need to download and install. So that's handy. And the standalone installer is just there because people are used to use something like that, and it's made from the same OSGeo4W packages, just in one big thing that installs all of them without you noticing. So that's the difference.
Okay.
Yeah, so as an example, if there's a new release of QGIS, you might only have like a 100 megabyte download instead of like a gigabyte download or whatever it was, 700 megs of getting the full installer. Does Jeff McKenna and Hans have any fill-ins for our 2010 to 2012 haul?
No, I'm sure they're typing a message.
I'll wait and see if somebody pops up some ideas. So we changed the name to QGIS from Quantum GIS in 2013. I think we switched to Qt4. The Qt4 is the underlying library that we use to build the graphical user interface of QGIS, and actually about a lot of other under the hood stuff. And that would just modernize the whole user interface and allowed us to build richer experience for in the application. We also started producing the visual change logs. Richard, again, like I said, he does a lot of this behind the scenes stuff. So every release we publish the change log, and then he goes and pulls it with some clever magic that he's written into the website here. So if you search for change log, you can get a beautiful history of there we go, of all the releases from 2.0 onwards, all available on the website here. And it's if you want to see when a new feature was introduced, we didn't cover all the features, but we wrote up like what the main features introduced with each release were, and the screenshots, and so it's a really nice way to go back and see like what kind of things arrived when in the project. And we still produce them thanks to Charles Dixon Paver, who's not in the room here, but like every release, Charles Dixon Paver makes sure that we write up all key new features and that they all get put together in a nice visual guide like this. And then Richard goes and takes that and publishes it onto the website. So that was a nice improvement. Is this right, Jürgen, that you took over as release manager I think it is in 2013, which makes me think that the builds were also then only happening after that, the OSGeo4W builds. And before Jürgen took over, I was doing release manager, and I was doing a really bad job, just like randomly putting out releases anytime that I thought was time for a release. And with Jürgen taking over the role, he really got everything on a proper schedule. He automated a lot of the work. He brought the quality levels up a lot. So it's been really fantastic having Jürgen do that. Also, Anita Graza joined us on the PSC at that time. And I think, Jürgen, is that when you actually joined the PSC? I don't remember if that's the same year that you actually joined the PSC. And I think, I don't know if we missed something, but we started the PSC also in this period because we joined the OSGeo Foundation, and maybe Jeff McKenna remembers when we joined. I was trying to look on the OSGeo website to see when projects joined, but it doesn't show. So if you go and look on osgeo.org, all of that, in case you're not familiar, that's the umbrella project for a whole bunch of open source geospatial projects, of which QGIS was one of the first. And we had to go through an incubation period. I think GRASS and QGIS and maybe GVSig were all sort of arriving at the same time. We had to go through an incubation period, and we had to do some like due diligence, one of which was to show that we had proper project governance. And part of that was setting up a project steering committee. So we formed the initial committee, and the idea would be that we provide some like high-level guidance for the project. At that time, Gary was the project steering committee chair. And then we had Anita, Jürgen, and Marco, and Richard were in the committee. And we also started working on the new website, which is now the old website, which is what we see when you come to the QGIS.org landing page.
The new old website.
As I mentioned in the previous session, we really need to overhaul this because it is kind of dated. I think it's now 6-7 years old, so or 8-9 years old, whatever. So if anybody out there wants to help us freshen up our website, we'd love to have you involved. But we need people who are doers, not just talkers, because it's a big thing. And Richard's, I think Richard's already you've been playing prototyping with things a bit already, hey, Richard?
Richard made a comment that another fun fact is that y'all are still running the old issue tracker. And he's given me a link. I'll put it in the live chat. But Victoria asked, who decides and draws the icon and graphic for the QGIS releases? And how do you guys decide the name? And I did see Anita putting up the graphic through time about 3 weeks ago on QGIS, which is fantastic. So how does it happen?
So that's all Anita Graze. She's the autistic member of the family, so to speak. And what we actually went through different sort of modalities. In the beginning, we used to name QGIS after our pets, and then it was after solar or planetary moons. And then somebody tried to sue us because we used the same name as their commercial product or something like that. Then so we switched to using interesting places. Capiopo was one of them. There was this huge copper mine disaster in Chile. And then we switched to using locations of Hackfest, and I think that one has kind of stuck pretty well. So we use the names of towns or places where we've had Hackfests, or something named after, where we had a Hackfest. And then Anita normally reaches out to somebody from the the organizing committee of the Hackfest and asks them, can you give us a free open map that we can use for the splash art? And then she takes it and themes it up and so on. And for the naming, Anita's the boss. So if you want to see your name on the splash, or your town's name, whatever, you've got to talk to Anita about that. Yes.
Or have a Hackfest there.
Have a Hackfest there as the first step, yeah, and then you can get your name on the list. So this bug tracker is a fun fact that Issue raised, because I think this ticket that he's given us is the very first ticket that was put in the bug tracker as well. I mean, I think this was carried over from the previous one, because this is on track, but before, or did Redmine come after this? Oh, this was, so we first had track, and then we had Redmine, and then we had GitHub issues, which we're now using. And can I say, a lot of gentle fights about the choice of which platform to use and so on. And it was a very long, involved process to eventually get ourselves over onto GitHub. Jürgen has also shared a link there. Let's see what he's got. Okay. So that falls in the hole. So that was the incubation. We graduated in 2008, sorry. And so when we graduated incubation, that meant we were now like an official OSGeo project. There we go. There we go. It's all there. Let's put the link there. And thank you for those who are jumping into the doc. That's great. It's open source at work. I think we became 10,000 times more successful, Jeff McKenna, since we joined OSGeo. I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere around there. With the new website, I think we had a store before. Actually, I've got some early pictures of me somewhere of wearing swag from like way back in 2003, 2004. But that's where we got like a properly organized swag shop, and you can go there and buy T-shirts and things. In 2014, we started with our annual budgets. So it was the first time we actually started really probably getting money into the project, and also then reporting on the money that came in. And I made a little chart here. The left is in euros and the right is time. And I think this last number was a forecast budget, not an actual budget. But you can see how the funding coming into QGIS has improved over time. This is just the gross amount of money coming in with sponsorships. What else do we get? Selling stuff in the swag store, donations. We don't call it sponsorships, sorry, we call them sustaining memberships because of some arcane Swiss law that if we get sponsorships, we have to pay more tax or something, but if we call them sustaining memberships, we pay less tax, so they are sustaining members. And the sustaining members have been really great, and the donors. I mean, what they allow us to do is a couple of main things. One is to run the Hackfest, so that would support people traveling into the same location pre-COVID days, and we would meet every 6 months. And the Hackfest were a huge boost just in terms of like team morale, like everybody getting excited about working in QGIS again after being at the Hackfest, and also just as a place to sit down and like dig through some complicated topics which are hard to do on email. And the other big thing that we get from the funding is paid bug fixing, like paying people to work on things that they wouldn't normally volunteer to work on. So especially coming up to the release, we have a bug fixing period where we fund developers to actually just go and up the quality as much as they can. So we just pour as much of the funding as we can into doing that. And at least everybody doesn't have to volunteer for these sort of unpleasant jobs. We also have funding for writing documentation. We use it to manage the web servers, which I don't know what our web servers cost us. Actually, not that much, but I mean, Richard, we should pull up some stats from Cloudflare just so people get an idea of how much traffic flows through the website every year, or every day, or week, or whatever. But it's multiple terabytes for sure. I mean, even I think within the case of a month, I think it's in terabytes, isn't it? So all of that stuff, having funding to pay people to look after that infrastructure, and to pay people to look after the bugs, and give people pizza when they come to Hackfest, is all fantastic. If all the project budgets are open, and that's one of the things we always try to do in the project, is to do everything in the open. So there's occasionally somebody will write to the PSC with some sensitive like lawsuit kind of thing or something like that we might keep behind closed doors. But in general, we try to do everything out in the open, and really just like make it all like transparent, and let everyone participate and be involved in any part of the whole project running. If you go to this link here, you can find all the previous financial reports for QGIS and see where the money's gone. So it's all transparently dealt with. Then in 2015, another big milestone came because we started the QGIS Foundation. And the idea was that we wanted to have a legal entity behind the QGIS project so that we could improve our fundraising activities, and also take over the website domain and the trademark. We did a whole trademark review thing for the QGIS.org name and logo. And it was also the year, sadly, Gary stepped down as chair and became the honorary PSC member for life of the project. And I'm sorry he's not here today, but he's like it was sad to see him go out of the PSC, but he's really left a long-lasting mark on all of our lives by starting QGIS. And that was also the year that I became chair in his place, basically, and that we started the first board. So before we had the PSC, which was mandated by having the OSGeo member, but the board was needed because the legal entity of the of QGIS.org needed to have a board, and that was like a subset of the people on the PSC. This is exciting. This is also the inflection point when QGIS became more popular than Esri. Now, how do I know that? You might say, where's the whole? Here's my very scientific chart, and this is if you look and search in Google Trends and you compare QGIS versus Esri, you can see at this little mark over here that we crossed the line, and we're the blue line, and Esri searches became less than QGIS searches. And you could argue that everybody knew how to do everything in Esri, so they didn't need to search anymore, and people were still figuring out how to do stuff in QGIS. I mean, or you could read the chart in all sorts of other ways, or you could say, well, you should put in ArcView rather than or ArcGIS or whatever. But still, I think it is a kind of indicative. Ah, yay! Here's the hero of the day.
Ah, yay!
Sorry, I woke
Hi,
up late.
Gary. We know it's very early. Thank you for joining us.
So you got it all done already.
No, we were at the highlight of where we QGIS crossed the threshold of being more searched for than Esri in 2015. I had a total blank about what happened in QGIS in 2010, 11, and 12. So if you've got any interesting thoughts about what happened then,
Look at me. I'm old. I don't remember anything.
We're in the same boat there, Gary. I don't remember anything either. I had to Google everything on this document. But yeah, it was exciting. We got more people searching for QGIS than for Esri. I mean, basically, Gary's fledgling project from 13 years before is now basically being more occupying more mind share than what Jack Dangermond's corporate behemoth had managed to garner. So that's really quite a landmark. Do you want to scroll back in time a bit to 2002, Gary? I know you've told the story lots of times, but I'm sure there's people watching the session who've never had the privilege of hearing you tell how you started QGIS and why you started it.
I'm sorry if you're asking me a question. I tried to put my AirPods in and they didn't work, so I couldn't hear anything for about 30 seconds.
I was saying, do you want to scroll back in time? And I know you've told the story lots of times, but there's people in the chat that probably haven't heard the origin story of QGIS. Would you like to tell everyone how and why you started QGIS in the very beginning?
Okay. Well, I've been doing a lot of application programming in my day job with Qt or Qt, however you would like to pronounce it. The toolkit, and one of the things we were doing was displaying survey parcels in this little application. And I'd been playing around with PostGIS, and I thought, well, I'd like to see that at home, because I've been using that proprietary software that puts features in a database, a spatial database, and was quite frustrated with it. In fact, we abandoned it at one point because this is another story, but we had a massive image catalog in ArcSDE, and they came up with an upgrade that basically inverted the colors on all of them, and they went from black lines on a white background to a negative image, and with that we chucked it and went to something else. But anyway, so I wanted to play with PostGIS and on my Linux box and display some features, and I couldn't find anything that really did that. Grass probably could do it. But me wanting to just play around and write software, decided to sit down and write something. So I took what I had learned at work, took absolutely 0 lines of code, and sat down and started to write a little app that would display features from a PostGIS database running on Linux box. And that's where the first rendition of what we called Quantum GIS back then came from. And it was pretty primitive. The first time I actually got it to run, that's all it did. There was a frame and hard-coded layer in the code, and it displayed the lines on the screen. So that was its humble beginning. And we went from there, started adding a few tools, and then I think it was around, you have the date there, 21st of July, I actually kind of threw the thing out there to the world, more or less, and generated some interest, and people started helping, and somebody said, well, we want to see more than just PostGIS. So then we ended up with being able to display the vector types found in the GDAL, ODR, or Goodle and Ogre, depending on what part of the world you're from, libraries. And then Tim and someone else, I think it was, decided they wanted to see rasters, and I said, yeah, do that, because I'm a raster idiot. So they worked on that, and it was pretty slow for 2 years, but then the more people got interested and the more brains that got involved, the better it got. And so I just sort of sat back and put it in cruise control for a lot of the time, and that's how we got to where we are today.
Do you remember what version of Qt you started with, Gary?
Do I remember what?
Which version of Qt that you used in the beginning?
It might have been a pre 1.0. I really can't remember. I'm pretty sure it wasn't 1.0, but that's a long time ago, Tim. Come on, man. It's 20 years ago.
And I was looking in the PostGIS history, and it looked like PostGIS only came out like later in the in the 2000, early, in the mid 2000, like let me just go and have a look again. PostGIS release history. So I was wondering, were you using just native Postgres, or was there already, or is this page wrong, basically? Because this is, maybe you were using a pre 1.0 release of it.
Yeah. Apparently, if they say 1.0 came out
in 2005.
Yeah. And you know the old saying, if I knew I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. If I knew QGIS was going to live this long, I'd have maybe written down some of the history better.
Well, that's what we're kind of doing today, but I guess is gathering up what we know for the last 20 years at least, and it will probably be all gems of knowledge in 20 years' time. It's so nice to have you here telling the origin story, and I'd been sort of just running through some of the key things that happened, but we sort of worked our way up to 2015, but I don't know if there were in those early days any other things that were standouts for you, like I mentioned, like adding Python bindings and plugins.
Yeah, the Python bindings were a big thing. I remember sitting around at the conference in Victoria in 2007, and the bindings were there, but 0.9 was not released yet, if I remember correctly. And I had some discussions with some of the folks there about setting up a repository for plugins that people could use. And so after that conference, I think it was, and my apologies if I get the people wrong, but I think it was me and Aaron Rasico went back and started putting together what eventually became the plugin repository. It was pretty crude at the time, of course.
And how were plugins originally distributed before the repository? Were we just sending zip files around, or I don't even remember.
Yeah. That was a big thing. That really changed the whole nature of QGIS, as far as I'm concerned, when people could use Python compared to
Live streaming is on.
We're back.
Hey. Yeah, and I think we pretty much don't have much in the way of C++ plugins shipping with QGIS anymore. We can do a quick nerd checkout if you have. We've just got the what have we got? Okay, we've got the geometry checker and offline editing plugin, and then of course Grass and the topology plugin. So there's not much happening really. I mean, we've been stripping them out. Things like some of those early plugins are now just core functionality. But of course, the providers are all plugins as well, aren't they? So that's probably still something that's significant in how they're used in QGIS.
one of the fun things was getting it to run on Windows. I remember fighting that battle.
I was trying to remember, because we originally were doing some cross-compiling, right, in MingW.
Yeah.
And I was trying to remember when that disappeared and got replaced by, I think Jürgen introduced the MSVC builds. He's in the room here with us, by the way. And the OSGeo graduation, have you got any fond memories of that? They made you jump through some hoops, I guess.
Oh yeah, we had to go through a whole set of code review and everything else for that.
Jeff McKenna's sitting in the stream chat room, reminding us of the germane details of that. Yeah, and then we'd worked our way through. Thank you. People are adding some facts in for 2010. So that was when we released in I never knew how to say that actually. Enceladus or Enceladus, I don't know.
Enchilada, yeah, enchiladas.
The whole enchilada. And what was the key things there? We had the rendering caching added. That was great. We'll come back and it looks like some helper elves are busy filling in some missing bits in our timeline there, so we can come back and see what they added in a few minutes. As we sort of worked our way to 2015, this was my very beautiful chart of the project finances over time since we've been producing financial reports. And I don't know if this is COVID. I guess maybe nobody wanted to share their money during COVID or something like that.
You would have thought people would want to learn new skills, and QGIS is such a nice program to do that with.
Yeah, but when you don't know about whether your income is certain in the future, I guess you stop donating to things like QGIS, where it's like a non-necessary outlay of your money. Oh yeah, and we just talked about how when you stepped down as chair, and that was back in 2015. And then I was showing my pretty chart here of world domination inflection point, basically. And that was also 2015 was the first year we had an LTR. And maybe Jürgen, you want to explain a little bit about the LTRs?
You know better than I do.
We had a long discussion in the Linux hotel in what town is that in? Essen. I guess it must have been in 2014 or something, trying to figure out a way, because there was a demand from the users to have some more stable release cycle, because up until then, we just put out the release every 4 months. Was it still at 4 months cycle then? I think it was 6 months at that time, Jürgen. Do you remember?
I don't think we ever had 6 months schedules, but no, I think it was 4 months all the time.
Okay. But basically they wanted something that didn't change so much, especially if you're working in an enterprise environment and you got to roll out a new copy of QGIS to your users every 4 months. That could be stressful, although we always argued, well, you don't have to roll it out just because we make it. It doesn't mean you need to use it. But the idea with the LTR was to try and like have a version that we like stabilized and spent some time and effort, making as stable as possible, so it was better suited for using an enterprise environment. And then the other releases in between that would be more like early previews of the next LTR. You could think of them like that. And I think in the beginning, it didn't have that much impact because we didn't have the bug fixing program as well organized around those. But I think nowadays we have a feature freeze for a month before that LTR release comes out, and there is a concerted bug fixing program that we use the funding that I mentioned before to pay for bug fixing on that release. And also, and this is where you can jump in if I get the details wrong, but also with the LTR, what we do is we release the normal 4-month release, and then we apply bug fixes to that, and then the LTR only actually gets made on 4 months later of the older release. So it's had time to kind of like be used out in the wild and settle down a bit before people start using it in production. So there are ongoing discussions about whether the LTR should be like 2 years instead of 1 year. I'm one of the people in favor of them having a longer time period, because in my experience, people don't switch out their software that often. But yeah, that's an open debate still about how long they should be. But I think under Jürgen's steady hand again, it's been really, it's really helped QGIS move up this chart, because it made QGIS an attractive proposition for somebody to put it into their enterprise environment where they want a more managed software lifecycle. And then in 2016, we had the first grant program. So that's another way that we spend the money from the project, which I hadn't mentioned before. And the grant program is basically an open call for ideas for applications for funding. And so we take the money that people donate to the project, and then we distribute it to developers, or it doesn't have to be developers, document writers or designers, whoever who's got an idea to improve the project. And in the beginning, I think it was like a wide open thing, so you could put in a proposal for anything. But I can't remember at which point we decided that we wanted the money to be spent more on like less on R&D type features and things like that, and more on stabilizing the code or improving the infrastructure, doing the kind of the boring work that your clients wouldn't normally fund you if you're a contracting developer. So things like improving the API documentation. For example, the Python API docs was something that was funded by the grant program, as well as I know Denny put a lot of his own personal time into it as well. But these kind of things that like add value to all our users, but probably clients and organizations don't want to fund directly. So we had a big jump in 2020, and then a dip back to 2021. I can't remember why that is. Might be linked to the big jump in the budget share and then dipping back down. It's really nice. We can like we can use the money to improve the project in ways that are not always visible to users, but just like keep all the underpinnings of the project in a good place. And that was 2016. Also, we got the first country user groups, and we have a diagram somewhere on our wiki on our website to explain that. Basically, the idea is that for every country, looking at you, Mark Cathian, that wants to like establish a user group, they can like register themselves here on this page, and then they'll elect a representative, and that user group basically gets one vote in the general meeting of QGIS that happens every year. So it means that as well as like participating to build experience and share knowledge in their country, they can also have some say in the direction of how the project itself is being managed. So I think we have 32 of these user groups now today, with the oldest ones being these ones here that were established back in 2016. And some of the user groups are like the Swiss user group is like the shining light of an example of what a user group can do. And the Brazilian ones also, user group also jumps to mind. The Swiss user group, they have like membership fees, and they fund feature development in QGIS, and they really like they fund feature development which is useful for the Swiss users. So they really organize and like help to steer what happens in the project using their funding. And the Brazilians are doing amazing things with like they've got their own user days, like in Portuguese, and they've got like a really switched on group there. I'm sure there's many others. Those are just two that pop to mind that are doing amazing things. We also started holding our AGMs in 2016. That's like an open meeting, kind of held in a. I think we had one in person in Spain, but in general they're like virtual meetings, and that's when we vote for PSC members if somebody's leaving, or any big decisions like changes to the statutes. That all happens in the AGM meetings. And we also started writing an annual report, and it's interesting read if you want to see how the project works, to go and have a look at the AGM reports. They're all again published online and open here, and the reports give like an overview of the finances, the releases that happened, got some splash screens, any community meetings that might have happened, all the minutes of the PSC meetings, and all the key things that happened in that year. So unfortunately, we didn't have these for 2010, 11, and 12, where I was missing the history. But it's a really nice way to just keep up at a very high level of what happened in the project in the year. You can see there we got the evolution of the QGIS logo showing as well. I think 2016 was when we introduced the new logo. I still got a T-shirt with that on it somewhere in my cupboard. Gary, have you got any swag from the early days? I think you're on mute, eh? We've got no audio for you, Gary. Just check you're on mute. No. Can anyone else hear Gary?
No, I can't hear him.
Through Gary, brandishing your QGIS mug. No, still no.
He's not on mute. We just can't hear him.
Yeah, see that you can unmute it and we can see you're talking, but we just can't get any sound.
You can always just jump in and out of the Jitsi meeting. Sometimes that helps.
A bit of a brain reset.
Yeah.
And then we came to 2017, and that was, if you're a big point, because QGIS, the WMS server in QGIS got ODC certified. That meant we were like standards compliant for the WMS server. And do we still maintain that, Jürgen or Richard? I don't know if we discussions about whether we want to keep on certifying ourselves or not, but we did for some years anyway. Gary's going to do a mic check there. And 2017, are you back, Gary? Let's see if we've got audio for you.
Back in the world of the living.
Try do a hello world there, Gary. Let's see if we've got audio for you. I don't think you can hear us now either. No, still no audio. It'll go to the old technology instead of the wireless headphone route. Anyway, moving on while Gary sorts out his audio there. The other exciting thing in 2017 was the 3D environment in QGIS landing. And before then, we had some previous attempts at doing 3D. I think Marco Bernasocchi and folks from SourcePol had written, what was it called, Jürgen? I forget what it was called. It was like a plugin that gave you like a 3D grid in QGIS.
OpenScene?
It used OpenScene. They had their own name for the actual thing they put in, that they called it. But yeah, it was like an OpenScene based 3D viewer, kind of like meant to look like a Google Earth, but it really never got production ready. It was always crashing, and people weren't very aware of it and so on. But the new 3D stuff from Martin Tobias and the team at Lutra Consulting has been getting just steady improvements every year. And especially in this last year or two, it's had a lot of improvements. I think we can show off your project, Markathian, to the point now where it's really quite a good experience working in 3D.
I see in the live chat we have a couple of comments. Felipe Gonzalez says that he feels honored about having coffee with Gary Sherman. And then there's a really interesting couple of questions from Maps and Data, asking a couple of questions about using QGIS tutorials and making QGIS tutorials and publishing them on YouTube. Is it ethical / allowed to do this, and can people make money off that, or is the licensing in a specific way that people can't do that? I think that's what Maps and Data wants to know.
Let's see if Gary or somebody else wants to answer so that I'm not talking all the time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sure, make money off of it. The only thing you can't do is violate the license, modify the code, and then charge people for it without distributing the code. The GPL2 is pretty liberal in what you can do with it, and that's what's allowed people to build whole businesses around it.
So there you go, Maps and Data, go for it.
If you want to be a nice guy, make sure that you point people back to the parent project so that.
Anyway, I don't know what happened with my audio. Everything said I wasn't muted, but anyway, regarding the coffee cup, my point with this was my wife kept breaking them, so I don't have the original.
Super glue, Gary. It fixes all broken items.
Well, not when there's 250 pieces the size of a pea pod or something. She didn't do it intentionally. But I do have a hat somewhere with the original logo on it.
Yeah, my partner recently drove over one of our branded mugs, and there was no coming back. Yeah. So super glue doesn't work on them all.
Yep.
Here we go to St. Lucia in 3D. Let's see if it's going to work. Yeah, so it's a really nice experience in 3D and QGIS now, and that's all thanks to all those changes that came in 2017. You can even make little fly-throughs. I think I've just flown into the mountain. But, that's just my bad navigation. And they're adding more and more improvements to it all the time. Like, for example, in the last release, you can have multiple 3D views and things, which is, it like remembers your view when you close the session, which is really good. So 3D, that was a great milestone in QGIS to be able to do this kind of stuff. I don't know how many hours I wasted just flying around St. Lucia, just gazing at the 3D landscape. And then what happened after that? We got QGIS 3. That was a big milestone. And that was when the main reason for QGIS 3 was, I think there were two main reasons. One was to get switched over to Qt 5. And the other one was to chuck away a whole bunch of legacy things in the API and break stuff so that we could have a cleaner base going forward. So I think it was pretty well organized. We had like a migration guide. I know Gary had to go and rewrite his book, so he probably wasn't too pleased, Gary. But yeah, that's the sort of like path of the course, right? The software moves on, and you should hold up your Python QGIS book while we are showing off our wares there, Gary. But, yeah, but it was a really good improvement because that base is still what we're using today. And I'd say the software is getting more and more like organized and tidy and clean and rich in the API. The API being the programming interface that allows you to build all sorts of cool things on top of it. And we try to manage expectations when we released version 3. So we called it the early adopter release because we didn't want everybody to just go and drop I think 2.18 was the production version at the time, and try and switch over to this when we knew that there was going to be some teething pains. Yeah, we also got the new OS X or OS 10 packages built from Lutra. Before that, it had been an effort from William Kingsborough, and before Tom, how do you say his surname again, Gary? Tom.
I could tell you if I could remember what his name was.
Elwitowski. There we go.
Yeah,
Tom,
there you go. Couldn't
Tom
think of his name.
Elwitowski, who had been the previous builder of the Mac packages, and then William Kingsborough. And the reason for building new packages was, there was a few reasons. One, we wanted to have them like published on the QGIS website because William's website was a bit, let's say, not workplace friendly, I guess. That kind of sounded like a bunch of manga art and things, and it was a bit confusing for people to come and download QGIS from that site where they weren't really sure whether they're getting it from an official place or not. Although he did an amazing job of building the packages all those years that he did it. The other big thing was that we wanted to have it built in a similar way to the OSGeo for W. We want to build it off the Brew packages in Mac OS, and also ultimately to sign them. I don't know if we have the signed packages yet, though. I think that's still on the roadmap. But the goal was to eventually have like signed packages so that the operating system doesn't see them as a non-legitimate or illegitimate software install. And then Paolo also became the chair because I stepped down, but a QGIS burnout going on with me, and Paolo was elected as the chair. Yeah, it was happy days to get QGIS 3 going. I think we've got a hole in our 2019 there as well. So the hole fillers, if you want to jump in on 2019, that would be great. Then we went to 2020 and we had our first QGIS Open Day. I was trying to remember if anybody does when we had the first QGIS conference, because as well as the Hackfest, we started having, I think we've only had 3 conferences, which were like, the idea was to have a bigger meeting with aimed at more end users, and people could present their work as users rather than just being a bunch of programming nerds sitting showing off lines of code. And we had 3 really great events based on that, but I can't remember when the first one was. I think it was at the first Nodibo Hackfest in Denmark, which we did together with the conference. And Lena Fischer, she could probably fill us in on when that was. But and then COVID struck, and we couldn't have conferences, and we couldn't have Hackfests. And I know that Raymond Nason wakes up crying every day that we can't have a Hackfest because he's really wishing we could just meet together. And he's been trying to organize one in the Netherlands, which would have been the Hackfest before COVID struck, and the Hackfest venue before COVID struck. Because of the COVID situation, we started these open days, and I think they were called Quackfests in the beginning first, or some funny name, but we changed them to open days just to make it a bit more approachable. And I think even when COVID is finished and long forgotten, I would hope that we carry on with these open days, because they're monthly, so it's a regular like meeting place for us to meet as a community. And of course, with Amy at the helm, it's been so fantastic. She and the team of like more anonymous helpers in the background with Amy Zinzi and Siabiwe, Vicky's here in the room. They're doing an amazing job of just putting on these events every time.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
I just see that Jeff says it's No Bedo in 2015 was the first conference.
2015, Nodibo.
Yeah.
Nodibo. Well, I've never been able to pronounce it properly.
And then Hans says in 2019, I think QGIS Conda package was introduced.
From Alex Net.
Yeah. Well, he says at least the blog about it is dated the 29th of May, 2019.
There's a couple of like crossed out O's in the word. Yeah, but I don't know how to write a crossed out O on my keyboard. Was that 2019?
Yeah, 2019 was QGIS Conda.
And that was Alex, I think.
Yes.
I'm only sort of obliquely aware of what that is, but basically, if you're using Python environment with Conda, then you can just run one command, and it will get a whole QGIS install with all the API, all the programming libraries and everything, and you can run QGIS.
If you look back in the history of the channel, Hans actually did a video with Conda in it. Yeah.
I'm just not a very good salesman of like what the value is, because I don't really use it very much. But I guess it's basically if you're wanting to do like Jupyter notebooks or other like Python programming with QGIS as a backend, then that's really great, because it just gives you everything set up and ready to go. You can use all the analytical tools of QGIS in your Python scripts. So we had our first open day in 2020. And Marco became the project chair, replacing Paolo Cavallini, and Alessandro Passotti joined the PSC in 2020 as well. And we finally ditched the old Windows 32 builds. So boohoo, if you still want to use the Windows 32 build, you've got to go and find one on the archive somewhere from before 2020. I should have had just like a big COVID sad face here, because most of the year was occupied by people worrying about COVID, I guess. When did COVID land? I've already lost track. Yeah, 2020 March, I guess. And then 2021. I've got a blank here as well. What happened in 2021, everybody?
Lots of stuff.
I'm going to quote you directly there, Gary.
There's always lots of stuff going on in the project.
I know in 2021 we started the official Open Day YouTube channel. That was definitely 2021. Because I think before that it was just on YouTube, but there wasn't like a dedicated channel.
Not only for the open days, although it's mainly used for that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure what else exciting things happened. I mean, it was, like you said, Gary, a lot of things going on, but hard to pick one particular thing. There's actually the release changelog to tell you everything, because it's just a huge amount of fantastic cartography and analytical tools and other things just flooding into QGIS. But it's like there's so many that it's hard to just like pick one. We should put mesh in here somewhere, because all the mesh support was a few years before this. There's also been another huge subsystem within QGIS itself, which I'm not as clued up as I want to. I think Richard has been studying up on how to use the mesh stuff, but
that's an interesting question. Ethan asked, when was the Telegram chat started?
That's the easy one to answer. That was in Bucharest in 2000, and when was Bucharest? 2019, 2020, 2019.
And we're just under 2,000 members now. I think as of this morning, it was 1,981.
Woohoo. Do you know how many members are on the Facebook group?
I can have a look. It was something like 34K when I last looked.
It was like 50,000 when I last heard.
Well, let me check. I may, this is the dyslexic one here, so.
2018, because I helped you organize FOSS-WG 2018, and it was in Tanzania. So let's see. Okay, it was 2019, I think.
52.9K members.
And that's Adelcy is one of the organizers.
Yes.
That 2019 was when the Telegram group started. Telegram QGIS group. Can you put the link into the group here? Started. Does anyone know when the Facebook group started?
Having a look in the about. Group created 20th of June 2016.
Ah.
But the name was changed to officially QGIS in January 18, 2022. But I think 2016 counts. So, Tim, I missed which link you're looking for?
The Telegram and the Facebook one.
Cool, gotcha. I'll grab both of them for you. Facebook.
Would you have ever thought 50,000 people would be all sitting around in a group talking about QGIS, Gary?
Wow.
And there's the Telegram.
And I think that's just a drop in the ocean compared to how many users there are out there in the rest of the world.
It's kind of amazing.
I think in the beginning we could name all the users by name.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of my journey through time that I prepared, but I don't know if anyone else wants to add some highlights for them of exciting things that have happened that they remember. Jürgen, Richard, others in the room.
One of the non-fun things I remember that you and I and probably others worked on was getting projection support into it.
Yeah, that was back.
Maybe you thought that was fun. I didn't think it was much fun.
I thought it was going to be easy. I thought, well, we just deconstruct every geometry to its vertices and take that and run it through Proj and then reconstruct it again, and then Bob's your uncle. We've got it projected.
Right.
Which is kind of the bits that I worked on, and then afterwards, then we found all these funny things that happen when you cross date lines and so on. Here we go. It was back in 2005. Yeah, that was a big change. Yeah, because for that you had to have everything in the same coordinate reference system.
Yeah.
Canadian chapter has joined us.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, no, what a fun session. I just want to say it's great. Sorry to be chatting away by myself on the YouTube chat, but I didn't want to I didn't want to overtake here. This is a great session. I think, honestly, it will be watched for many years or decades later. Just this great thing to have on record. It's fun. Super fun. You're making my Friday, everyone.
Yay.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff, you can't turn off your webcam until you've given us an update on the dog situation.
She is at my feet. I'm glad. Come here. She's a little bigger now. 50 pounds.
We can't see.
7 months.
Turn off your webcam.
7 months now.
Still can't see. Can you see anything?
You can't see?
No.
What do you mean you can't see?
Your cam is off. It was working for a bit in the beginning, then when the dog came out, then the cam went off.
Okay, I'll just refresh. Sorry about that.
Keep the dog away from the keyboard.
I think there's probably some cat-originated code in QGIS because I had various cats through the last 20 years running over my keyboard while working on QGIS. I don't know how many random paw prints landed up in the code base.
I see, Christine, you wanted to speak. Hang on, are you on mute? Because we can't hear you.
I forgot to turn the mic on. It was a great session. I mean, I didn't realize how far back QGIS actually went. I came into it 2013, 2014 or something, somewhere in the twos. And yeah, and I just wanted to say hello to the puppy dog. Hello, Papa. Hello, gorgeous.
7 months.
If it wasn't almost 11 o'clock at night where I am, I'd get Whitby and just say hello. Hello, aren't you beautiful?
Oh,
yes, you are. You know when you're the center of attention.
I just don't understand why he's not wearing any QGIS paraphernalia, Jeff.
True. I have phosphor G on, but you're right. Good point.
For the dog, I was thinking we needed like a dog jacket or something.
No, you're right.
Beautiful.
It's cute. She's not usually sitting at my desk.
She's grown so much, I can't believe it.
Unbelievable. 50 pounds, or what would that be? 20 kilograms.
Like 755 kilograms.
I subscribe to the YouTube channel too. And the Facebook one.
Her name's Shai, S-H-A-I. Are you going to work for me today?
The brains of the operation.
Before we go, we can ask Mark Cathian, who's sitting quietly there. Are you able to come on mic, Mark Cathian?
Yeah, I'm able to come on.
Maybe you can just tell a little story of like what happened in St. Lucia with QGIS and like how it's impacting like your life in St. Lucia with people like Gary who maybe don't get to hear about real people out on the ground who are using it and how it's like changing the world a bit.
Well, how do I start? Okay, so I'm the IT officer for the Department of Physical Development. We are supposed to be involved in spatial data management. Our cadastre, our surveys are all authenticated and managed here at our department. And we have been running into several issues when it comes to the cost of licensing proprietary software to get our work done, and also the low level of utilization. So I had been looking for the 10 years that I've been IT officer, I had been trying to figure out QGIS and how to get it to be used in our department. I remember one header section indicating that they can't just have their staff switch because they've already invested quite a bit of effort and resources in getting persons trained in the better known proprietary competitors to QGIS. Even though there's one of the
established the worst known.
Well, they might be the worst known, but I think there are other proprietary competitors. But we were using one of those proprietary competitors, and so they decided that we had already expended quite a bit of effort in there, and so we would not be making use of it or not be putting effort into switching anytime soon. So that stayed at the back of my head until we ended up with the DVRP project. I think is a disaster vulnerability risk reduction project funded by the World Bank, and I decided, there's a chance to get the necessary resources invested in promoting the use of it. And so we developed this request for proposals for a free and open source GIS applications training project, which Cartosa was one of those entities that submitted a bid or expression of interest and won. I see Amy celebrating with a Cartosa mug. And they conducted a training session for 60 persons in St. Lucia in the use of QGIS and other related open source GIS applications. And during the course of that time, we've seen a number of persons gain the necessary exposure to work with this. We've seen persons from the fire department, persons from the police force. We've seen persons from the economic research units all getting exposed to this kind of training. And they've been able to see the power of GIS and leverage the power of GIS in their agencies, even though not fully in their agencies, but some of them as individual professionals in the execution of the day-to-day tasks are able to make use of it, and for them to be able to find ways of getting their work done easier. So I have an economist colleague who I introduced it to him when we were looking at property tax evaluation and how to propose a new system for residential property tax. And he got in, and he has been using GIS to do additional analysis using QGIS, R, and a whole bunch of stuff. He sent me 2 weekends ago some stuff that he was trying to do in R, and I've not been able to get to look at it. And one of our firemen who did the training program decided that he was going to map out the fire hydrants, and he just recently posted a message to us telling us two things. He got moved out of being a field fireman and into the IT department of his of the fire service because of his newfound skills using QGIS. And once, when he was out on the field, he had to replenish the fire truck, fill it up after fighting a bushfire. And he was there with someone who was more familiar with the area, who indicated to him that the place he was going had no fire hydrant. But he was using the application that he had developed in QGIS and input to map out the fire hydrants, and followed that information to get to the location where the fire hydrant was, to the surprise of the other colleague. So we've seen some underground impact of the exposure to QGIS, and the training that we got with Katoza. I'm hoping that we'll continue exploiting it. Just this morning, I had a meeting with the Inland Revenue Department where I was showing them how we merged the data from our land registry with our cadastral map sheets and brought all of that into a QGIS project, which I handed to them on DVD for them to be able to now do their property tax assessments and be able to visualize the on the ground using satellite imagery right there from that project, and to do the search for the proprietors, etc., and get brought to the actual location of the property that they're assessing. So we're seeing some things happening. It has been an interesting journey. We've had persons who had no idea what GIS was able to get to use geographic information systems and not have to be roadblocked or sidelined by the exorbitant entry costs that they would have had to encounter traditionally before the advent of the QGIS community. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so great. And sorry, I wasn't trying to pimp Katoza's training, but more just that you know, like, Markathian's story, you can hear it all over the world, Gary. Like people all over the world that had a huge impact. Vicky, who's in the call, is sitting in Nairobi, in Kenya. Like she's got a job thanks to open source and QGIS, and I'm sure many of us in the room here all have jobs thanks to it. So you've made a huge impact on the world, and I hope you sleep nicely every night knowing that the world's a better place because of what you started.
Yes.
Awesome.
So thank you very much, Gary.
Yes, thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Indeed.
Thank you.
About 2 to 3 minutes.
Let me see if I can get my camera on briefly.
So if it comes off, I will put it back on.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, that's me on the back window of my office.
And I must say, like people like the folks at St. Lucia, and everywhere around the world where we've presented QGIS to people, they're so incredibly grateful and amazed what you get for free, basically, in this amazing software. So even though those thanks don't always bubble up to you, Gary, and the rest of the developer team, people are really so thankful for what they get.
Yeah. Oh, also, I think some time ago, somebody also used it to prepare some search areas to help in a missing person search. So I didn't get into the details of how he went about doing that. He just gave us a brief note that he had recently done that in there. Yes.
Brilliant stuff. I think I'm going to start bringing our session to a close because our next session starts at 5 o'clock my time. So I would just absolutely love to thank everybody who joined, who jumped into the Jitsi room. Thank you, Tim, for organizing that great layout of the time frame. And thank you to Gary for joining us and starting everything, really, starting the whole of QGIS. He's definitely the father of QGIS.
Yeah, and the old man gets up late nowadays.
Awesome job. And leave that document link going if people want to jump in there and collectively add to the timeline. That would be great because it is nice to just scratch out the history of QGIS, and we'll put it on the website somewhere in the future once we've got it a bit more fleshed out.
Great document.
Awesome. All right, thank you, everybody, and please join in for the next session.
I would go feed my cat.
Cheers, everyone.
Nice to hear you. See you all.
Yes, bye.
Bye, everyone.